The choice facing BBC Two now is between 12 talented young musicians playing in the Woodwind semi-final.
Welcome to Young Musician of the Year from the Birmingham Conservatoire. Tonight we'll hear 12 competitors who'll take part in the Woodwind semi-final of the competition, presented in association with Lloyds Bank. At the end of the evening, 5 players will be chosen to go forward to the final round, which you can see next Wednesday. Tonight's competitors are Tamsin Cadman, a 17-year-old oboist from Ecton Park, Northampton; 14-year-old Juliet Bowser, who's from Lighthorn, Warwickshire, and plays the flute; saxophonist Andrew McNeil, who's 19 and comes from Auchenheath in Scotland; 17-year-old Rachel Ager from Swindon in Wiltshire, who's an oboist; recorder player Jill Kemp, who's 14, from Honley in Yorkshire; 16-year-old oboist Catherine McIntosh from Milngavie, Glasgow; Julie Stewart, who's a 15-year-old flautist from Bathgate in Scotland; Emma Bullough plays the oboe and is 17 and comes from Pembury in Kent; flautist David Edmonds is 17 from Kendal in Cumbria; 18-year-old Stuart King is a clarinetist from Grimston in Norfolk; 17-year-old flautist Mary Owen is from Wellington in Somerset; and our last competitor, Daniel Bates, is a 17-year-old oboist from Bromley in Kent. Tonight's jury is chaired by the oboist Nicholas Daniel, the 1980 Young Musician of the Year. Nicholas, a sought-after soloist and chamber musician, is director of the Hafner Wind Ensemble. Nicholas is joined by clarinetist Joy Farrell, a busy freelance orchestral and chamber player, and Philippa Davis, principal flute of the London Mozart Players, the Nash Ensemble and London Winds. Coincidentally, all 3 are professors at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. First this evening, oboist Catherine McIntosh. Catherine's played oboe as well as piano concertos with the Royal Scottish Academy of Music Chamber Orchestra. She studies the oboe with Stephen West.
I've only been playing the oboe for 3 years, and my ambition was to play the piano in Young Musician of the Year. And until about a year ago, I was going to be playing the piano, and then the oboe sort of took over. I don't really like competing against other people. I don't regard Young Musician as a competition. I just regard it as a good performing experience and a good way for other people to hear you play.
was Julie Stewart's teacher, Lex McDowell, who inspired her to take up the flute when she was at primary school. She now plays in the National Youth Orchestra of Scotland.
There's not many composers I don't like, but I'd have to say I tend to go for romantic composers. Well, my programme's not really romantic, it's actually 20th century. I'm starting with the Poulenc Sonata, which is French, and it's very expressive, that's why I've chosen that. And it's got lovely little tunes in it that appear every now and again. Syrinx is basically a 2-minute masterpiece. It's the only flute solo Debussy's ever written, and it's just great.
Andrew McNeill studies saxophone with John Harle. Andrew is also a composer, and he has a very different approach to his recital. He sees his performance as a kind of journey in which his role is to guide the audience.
Straight after Pan, what's going to happen is I'm going to ask the audience beforehand, leaving a little note on their seats, to refrain from clapping. I mean, I'm sure I'd be able to stop them from clapping with body language and things. It's just to keep this elusive atmosphere, to keep them in the dream. So then it will immediately go into Bach to get this immediate contrast.
Rachel Ager originally wanted to play the cello, but she was offered the oboe by a peripatetic teacher at her junior school. She's now a pupil at Wells Cathedral School and has oboe lessons with Irene Pragnell.
I really enjoy performing. It's quite hard on the oboe because I get very tired. My lips are just completely exhausted from playing for a long time. So I find it quite hard to play for a long time in front of an audience. I'm always very nervous beforehand, but in a way I think the nerves help because it makes it seem more real.
Next this evening, we're going to hear the only recorder player to have reached the semi-finals. Jill Kemp is taught by her mother, but she also has occasional lessons with the renowned Danish musician Mikola Petri.
Well, I first played when I was about 4, and then I went to see Mikola Petri in a concert at about 8, and then I started having lessons. And then later on, she said she'd teach me, occasionally, sort of a few times a year. And then I started learning properly when I was about 8. I'm playing Souvenir by Kupkovich. That's been edited by Mikola Petri, because it was for violin. But it's very fun, and I like that.
David Edmonds has flute lessons with Rachel Holt at the Junior Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester. He recently played this Mozart flute concerto with the Cumbria Youth Orchestra.
I was first interested when I was sort of about 9, and I went to a concert by James Galway, and I just decided to take up the flute from there, really. I do enjoy performing in front of audiences, and it is quite nerve-wracking, but I do enjoy it because you get quite a lot of experience and you learn how to sort of communicate with the audience, and you learn how to sort of project right to the back of the hall where you're performing.
Emma Bullough played the treble recorder in her junior school before taking up the oboe. She now studies with Hugh McKenna at Cheetham School of Music in Manchester. Oboists are well known for being paranoid about their reeds. Was this a problem for Emma?
I'm really worried about my reeds today. The one that I wanted to play on is a bit tough, but my teacher's coming in today and he's going to hopefully scrape it and make it a little bit lighter for me. Because it's my programme has got so many different things that I need to be able to do, like play in the Britain. I've got to be able to play loud and then suddenly go really quietly. It's got to have a full sound.
Next, a flautist who started playing when she was just 4 years old, taught by her mother. Juliette Bowser now has lessons with Anna Pope and is a pupil at the Purcell School in Harrow.
I'm in the National Youth Orchestra, and I also play in various chamber groups at the Academy, Junior Academy Music. I play the piano as well, and I've done my grade 7. On the piano it's all there for you, you just press the keys and everything basically, but on the flute you have to produce the sound and it's got to be something special.
Tamsin Cadman enjoys romantic music and opera. She started on the clarinet at school and later switched to the oboe.
This is the first competition I've ever done. I think if you go in with the right attitude, if you're not too worried about the outcome, you're not just going in to win, you're going in to perform and have a good time, then they're a really good idea and give you a lot of performance opportunity. If you're the sort of person who has to win at any cost and then you might get knocked out, it's such a blow that I don't think it's worth it.
such a popular instrument, it's quite surprising that Stuart King is the only clarinetist performing this evening. Stuart is now in his first year at the Guildhall. Stuart took up the clarinet after hearing Peter and the Wolf when he was at primary school. But what particularly attracts him to the instrument?
Well, I think it's a very versatile instrument. I mean, it hasn't been around for all that long in contrast to things like the flute and the oboe, which have been around for quite a long time, so there's not any Baroque music written for it. But in the time it has been here, there's been a lot of music composed for it, I mean, ranging from new classical stuff to jazz and blues and that sort of thing. So it's very versatile, which I think what drew me to it.
Mary Owen also plays piano, guitar, accordion and electric keyboard in a group at school. She plays recorder in a folk band and she's recently started playing jazz flute. Mary is also a member of the National Youth Orchestra, but when did she start playing the flute?
When I was 8, I played a lot of recorders and things at school, and my teacher just suggested that I take it up. I didn't have much choice, I was just taken off to a lesson, and I just enjoyed it, so I carried on doing it. I didn't actually decide I really want to play the flute or anything. I just ended up doing it and enjoyed it. Today I'm going to be playing a French piece by Ionesco. It's really beautiful. I think the audience will quite like that.
Our last musician this evening, Daniel Bates, also reached the semi-finals in the 1992 Young Musician competition, when he was awarded the Walter Todd's Bursary for the Most Promising Young Player.
I don't really enter competitions to win them. I mean, I do a lot of competitions. I enter them really to get performing practice, which I think is the main aim, or should be the main aim of competitions, to give young people a platform. Before I start playing a piece, I always try to picture a scene or a mood, or in some cases, in some pieces, a storyline sometimes helps. It just helps me to understand the piece better, I feel.
While the jury are making up their minds, a reminder of the 12 musicians we've heard this evening. They were oboist Catherine McIntosh, flautist Julie Stewart, saxophonist Andrew McNeil, oboist Rachel Ager, flautist David Edmonds, recorder player Jill Kemp, oboist Emma Bullough, flautist Juliette Bowser, oboist Tamsin Cadman, clarinetist Stuart King, flautist Mary Owen, and oboist Daniel Bates. Now the verdict. The chairman of the jury, Nicholas Daniel, will announce the names of the 5 Wind finalists.
As you've heard, the standard was phenomenally high, and there was an amazing degree of both achievement and potential shown. I think that balancing up those two things is what we've spent the last little while doing. So I'll just get on with the names straight away and put these poor people out of their misery. In the order they played: Catherine McIntosh, Julie Stewart, Emma Bullough, David Edmonds and Stuart King. If you'd like to come up. I'm sure you'd like to give the warmest applause to the other participants that played and give them your support and your thanks for their performances.
You can see the final of the Woodwind category next Wednesday. Young Musician of the Year, an event presented in association with Lloyds Bank, returns tomorrow with the percussion semi-final. For now, I'll leave you with the 5 musicians who will be competing next week for a place in the concerto final.
How do you feel about having an abortion?
Scared. A tale of adventure. Love.
I love her really deep. She doesn't realise that.
And friendship.
Bimbo's my best pal in the whole world. Nothing gets in the way of me and Bimbo.
Oh Mary This London, Scream 2, tonight at 9 on BBC Two. Identical twins Rashid and Rashad lead one of the most feared and ruthless gangs in Cape Town, the Hard Livings.
Feel very lucky. We are in this people, hard livings.
Their trade is armed robbery, contract killing, gun running, and narcotics.
When I'm in that mood, it's not that I kill you. That's the truth. The most of the youngsters in the gangsterism want to kill people. You can see it in his eyes, you can see it in his ways of life.
Beloved Country, The Cape of Fear, tomorrow 9:30 on BBC Two.
Controversy and heated debate are on BBC Two's agenda now. Jeremy Paxman presents a radical option which begins like this.
The House of Commons has voted narrowly in favour of abolishing the monarchy. King Charles has spoken of his personal sadness, but says he will not question the will of the British people.
Good evening. Getting rid of the monarchy would have been unthinkable a few years ago. If anyone summed up what it meant to be British, it was the King or the Queen. But have they any right to expect jobs for life? A succession of scandals has given the small caucus of public Republicans in this country a shot in the arm. The radical option aims to explore ideas which aren't yet part of mainstream political argument, but which could become so. Tonight, the case for sacking the royal family will be made by Professor Stephen Hazler before an audience, some of whom think he's talking about the only way to turn this country into a democracy for the 21st century, and others who think he's a traitor. Here's his argument.
The royal family does not come cheap. After adding in the royal yacht, train and plane, the price tag for a head of state we didn't choose is put at around £100 million per year.
The Wall Street Journal recently calculated that the British monarchy costs double the combined costs of all 6 other European monarchies to the British taxpayer. In the spring of each year, it happened last year, Prince Philip takes a 10-day Caribbean cruise on the yacht, which cost the taxpayer, by the time he's used the Queen's flight to get back and forth, about £5 million for one man to have a 10-day holiday in the Caribbean with a crew of 277 at his beck and call. Now, I think what's contributed to the recent unease is that the taxpayer paying for that 10-day, £5 million cruise actually couldn't himself or herself afford to go on holiday last year.
Queen Elizabeth made constitutional monarchy popular at a time when every other country in the developed world was becoming more, not less, democratic. She did it by making the royal family a role model for the British people. But the broken marriages, scandals and infidelities of the next generation of royals has fatally undermined that claim. the monarchy no longer provides any sort of moral yardstick for the rest of us. Faced with the prospect of King Charles III, I believe that this Queen's reign should be the last. Britain invented parliamentary democracy, but in the 20th century our democratic standards have slipped, and sadly we've fallen behind other Western nations. That's because at the very heart of our Constitution there's the monarchy and the royal prerogative powers exercised by ministers in the name of the Queen. And it's the powers of the Crown that make our government one of the most centralised, secretive and unaccountable in the developed world.
Well, the Queen hasn't got any real power, has she? She's not a politician. She's above all that. 84p, please, love.
The royal prerogative powers are enormous in terms of things that the government can do and the Prime Minister can do that don't need the consent of the House of Commons. Make war, sign treaties, make peace, appoint ambassadors, sign pardons, create commissions. It's a whole range of powers that don't require the House of Commons to vote on. So that gives enormous power to the Prime Minister on behalf of the Crown. When the Falklands War was declared, when an armada was sent out to the Falklands Island, that was done by a Prime Minister using the powers of royal prerogative. The Gulf War and what happened there, that was done under the powers of royal prerogative. There was even a threat that the Maastricht Treaty Bill that we discussed in the House of Commons didn't really need the House of Commons in the end to approve. The government could have used the royal prerogative to ratify. It would have caused an enormous row, indeed, on their own side. But those powers are there, they have been used, they are used, and they will be used in the future unless we do something about them.
Quite apart from the powers of royal prerogative, the Queen has considerable personal powers, including the power to call the head of the party with the largest number of seats to become Prime Minister and form a government. With a hung Parliament a very real prospect, the implications are deeply worrying.
We are going to have a hung Parliament very soon, I'm sure, and that will then give the Queen the ability to decide, to cherry-pick almost, which particular party leader am I going to call? And that will give enormous influence to the first person that she's called, because that person will then have a chance of trying to cobble together some sort of an administration, but will do so from being able to sit inside number 10 as the Queen's chosen person, which will give him or her great power.
With the overall conclusion.
Whether the Queen or the House of Lords, the two unelected arms of our government, aim to act in the country's best interests or not, is immaterial. At the end of the day, they are not accountable to the British people.
We can't get rid of people in the House of Lords. We can't do anything about the monarchy, and yet they both exercise enormous powers over us. So whatever their experience, however well-intentioned and decent people they are, the fact is they are not elected. And if they are not elected, they are illegitimate.
The British royal family? Oh, I adore them.